Today I am going to teach you about resources, the geography of yours, Standard 8 Geography, first chapter. What is resource? About the different classifications of resource and why are resource important for us, for our progress, for our development, and why we need to conserve resources. About the various aspects of the resource today we are going to discuss in this class of mine. First of all, what is resource? If we go into the detail of that, we would find that anything and everything that is available in the environment have the capacity to satisfy human need is called resource. Technically, if we see that science says that everything in the world can broadly be divided into two parts. One is, or first of all, everything that we see around us is either matter or energy. Now, further subdivisions or further classification, matter can further be broadly divided into living matter, and non-living matter. Energy can be also divided into conventional and unconventional. Non-conventional source of energy. So this is what the broader classification of everything that we see around us, that we feel and find. This is what, but then geography viewpoint, that out of all these subdivisions, out of all these things, be it a matter or energy, if they have the capacity to satisfy human need, they will be called a resource. So, everything available in the environment have the capacity to satisfy human need is called, or our need is called, resource. Now, the different classifications of the resources. Now, everything that has been available in our environment can either be available with the natural, because when we divide environment, we can also divide it broadly into two parts. One is natural environment and second is man-made environment. Hence, the resources can also be natural resource or man-made resource. Natural resource, for example, sun or sunlight, heat, wind, soil, water, air. These are all available to us naturally and have the capacity to satisfy our need, hence are called natural resources. Okay. Similarly, the chalk in my hand, that is satisfying one of our needs presently to write on the board. So this, my need of presently writing on the blackboard is being fulfilled by this chalk, which is made by human beings or is been shaped rather in the factory or small scale unit somewhere. Because why I am telling this, this is also one of the natural resources that we have a little bit made some amendments or pending or the improvements into that one to make it a chalk that we use to write on the board. So these are all the man-made things and satisfying the need of ours, the clothes, for example, that is satisfying the need of covering the body and made by human beings, manufactured in the industries. That is the example of man-made resources. This is what the broader classification of resource. Now second, from where they are coming. As two examples I had given here. One is natural resource, second is man-made resource. But in both the cases I have talked about the sun, the wind, the land, the soil. These are all non-living things. Or the chalk, man-made but non-living things. But suppose forest, animal. There are many animals that we use them to satisfy some of our needs. For example, the milching animals give us the milk, and that requirement of ours is also fulfilled. Suppose draught animals that carry the load and use for transportation purposes are also the resource or satisfying the definition of or fitting into the definition of resource, but they are all living things. So here the natural resource or the resource can again be subdivided on the basis of origin as biotic and abiotic. Anything that comes from the biosphere or have life in it in some form are called biotic resource. Fish, forest, plant, animals. These are all examples of biotic natural resource. Abiotic means the origin is from non-living thing, as I have told, land, soil, mineral, etc. These are all abiotic natural resources. So, on the basis of origin, we can divide a resource into biotic and abiotic. Now, second, on the basis of exhaustibility, that you keep on using. Suppose the chalk in my hand, as I have told, is the resource simply because some of our need is been, or the writing need of ours precisely is been satisfied by this chalk, and hence it is a resource. But if I keep on writing, after some point of time it will be finished and exhausted, and exhausted forever. It may turn into a dust, it will disappear and finish. So this is called exhaustible or non-renewable. It cannot be renewed, it cannot come back. But there are another many resources. For example, we'll keep on using, satisfying our need, but keep on using, and till humanity exists, the wind is likely to be there. Okay. Water, we know that one, the water cycle, that through that water cycle it can once again come back through the process of that evaporation, then condensation and precipitation. So keep on using them, but after some point of time they would be coming back. The solar energy, the wind energy, these are all the examples of renewable resources because they can be renewed either naturally or mechanically or by any other processes. Okay. So on the basis of exhaustibility further, we can classify resource as renewable and non-renewable, or exhaustible or inexhaustible. Inexhaustible resources are water, solar energy, wind energy, tidal energy, and exhaustible or non-renewable resources are minerals, the chalk, the petroleum, fossil fuel, coal, natural gas. These are all the examples of non-renewable resources. Now, further classification that has been given in your book is there are further classification of the resources. One is ubiquitous on the basis of availability, okay, and another is localized. What does it mean? As you see, the word is self-signified. Ubiquitous resources are those resources that are available everywhere, universally available everywhere. For example, wind. No matter where you go, you will be finding wind there. But localized resource, for example, petroleum, it has been localized at a particular place. Everywhere, wherever you go throughout the globe, everywhere you may not find petroleum, but everywhere you may find wind. So this is what, on the basis of availability and their presence If some resources are being space bound and confined at a particular place, is called localized resource. On the other hand, there are some, they are being found everywhere, are called ubiquitous resource. Okay. Now, who is owning what? On the basis of ownership, who is the owner of the resource? It can further be divided into individual resource, community resource, national resource and international resource. And you see the name itself is suggesting individual resource. Suppose this is the chalk belonging to me. I am the owner of this chalk and nobody can use this chalk without my concurrence, without my permission. So hence I am the owner of this resource, and this chalk from this viewpoint is an example of individual resource. Okay, so personal orchard, personal garden, the wells, etc. These are all examples of individual resource. Now, on the other hand, if a particular resource is being used by the people living in that area, by a community, and is been available to everybody, for example, in the rural areas, the pasture ground, the grazing ground, the burial ground, anybody can go there and can bury their crops for the dead bodies. Anybody can go there to graze their animal if that is a grazing ground. The parks in the urban areas where the people go there to recreate themselves and park. Hence, from the recreation viewpoint is also satisfying some of our need, and that is called aesthetic resource. For example, we go on to the hill station to see the scenes and sceneries. Why we are going there? If some of our needs are not being getting satisfied, it is meaningless to go and visit far off places by giving the physical trouble to ourselves as well as economic overload on ourselves. Definitely some of our need is definitely been getting satisfied. That is called aesthetic need. We feel recreated, we feel recharged, we feel fresh in the mind, and then once again get ready to do our work, and that is actually called that aesthetic resource. Okay, so anybody could go there and use the playground, for example, in the locality where you can also go and play, myself can also go and play, and that is actually called the community resource. Now the national resource, as the name itself suggests, technically anything that is being able to satisfy human need and able to and satisfying human need and has the capacity to and technically owned by the government of India is, for example, within the political boundary of India, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Gujarat to Arunachal Pradesh. That is all, and in coastal area, from the coastal area to around 20 kilometers, that is called that is called exclusive economic zone also. Okay, these are all coming within the political boundary of that country, and within this political boundary, the forest, the river, the dams, canals, minerals, whatever is being found, technically who is the owner of that one? The government of that country, and hence it is called national resource. And international resource, there are some resources, suppose from the coastal area up to 20 kilometers or 19.2 nautical miles is actually the coming within that national resource. But beyond that one, up to 200 kilometers or beyond 200 kilometers, even if the resource, suppose in the ocean, in the mid-ocean somewhere, is dissolved in the ocean water, is suppose NaCl, which is common salt, is also a resource. There are many minerals found in the bed of the ocean. So if it is in that particular range or the area of the ocean coming within that 19.2 nautical mile, is actually that belonging to who is the owner? Is the country's government. But beyond that one, some international organization look after all this. And if somebody wants to catch the fish, suppose somewhere in mid-ocean, then you'll have to take the permission from that some international or petroleum has been found there, then it cannot be used without the concurrence of the international organization, and hence that petroleum found in Mumbai High is actually, who is the owner, is the government of India, but petroleum found in the deep ocean somewhere in the Indian Ocean beyond that 200-kilometer exclusive zone, that is some international organization has been given the chance to look after it, to control it, and hence that is an example of international. So on the basis of ownership, the resources can broadly be divided into four categories, that is individual resource, community resource, national resource, and international resource. Now another classification is on the basis of development. If resource has been developed and ready to use, on the basis of the status of development, resources can be divided further into four categories. One is developed resource, as the name itself suggests. Say for example, the coal of Lalmatia has the capacity to satisfy some of our need, and it is also satisfying our need. We are being using it whenever we wish to take it out, and with the available technology we are being using it fine. Okay, so that is coming under the category of developed resource. Another one is a potential resource, as the name itself suggests, on the basis of a status of development. One is, what is the status of the coal of Lalmatia, for example? That is developed one, because it has the capacity to satisfy human need in first hand, and second, with the available technology, whenever we wish, whenever we require, as per our requirement, we can extract them, we can exploit them and use them also. So the coal of Lalmatia is coming under the capacity of development, in the category of the developed resource. But say the same coal found in Antarctica, it has the potential to satisfy human need. The coal anywhere has the potential, but then for some reason, and that some reason maybe technologically it is not accessible, maybe economically it is not feasible or viable, because bringing the coal, you can say, sir, with the same technology that we use to extract and exploit the coal of Lalmatia, why can't it be the same technology applied to extract and exploit the coal of Antarctica? Fine, we can use the same technology, but then economically it would be very unprofitable. It is not viable to go there, to exploit them and then bring and then use them. So economically it is not feasible. So we are somewhere analyzing any resource on these three parameters also. These three, one is what? To start with, what I have told, anything that has the capacity to satisfy human need is called resource. Now three components are also added, provided that it is technologically accessible, economically feasible, and culturally acceptable. Before going into this classification on the status of development, let me throw some light on these three angles as well. That is making the resource or anything the resource completely. There are many things. Suppose the coal is a fossil fuel which would have been buried inside the Earth's surface millions of years ago. Okay, human civilization was existing, but they don't have the knowledge of using them, or if had the knowledge, they don't have the technology to take it out, and hence it was just a non-living matter. It was not. So that matter, as I have told in the beginning, anything around us is either matter or energy. Whatever you see around yourself is either you are seeing me, I am a living matter, human being. You are seeing desk, benches, table, chairs in your home, they are non-living matter. You are seeing me is that energy, that is through the light energy. You are listening to me is thanks to the sound energy. So whatever you see around yourself, whatever we find around ourselves, can broadly be divided into matter or energy, and matter can further be either living matter or non-living matter. Where is then resource? Any of them if have or have the capacity to satisfy human need is called resource, provided it should be technologically accessible. Say the technology we have that we can bring and exploit the coal of Lalmatia in our surrounding, but we don't have the technology to bring the same, exploit the same coal or petroleum from Antarctica. Okay, we don't have the suitable, adequate technology to do that from Antarctica. The same. Suppose if we are applying the same technology what we used to apply here, then the second parameter comes into play is actually economic viability, because in exploiting, first of all, take your technology there, then exploit it. First of all, going there is very difficult. You cannot go deep into Antarctica. If you have been going there, the situations and climatic conditions are not favorable or conducive. Then enduring all such things, you have overpowered everything and then finally exploited it. And when you brought into the market, you are finding that the coal that is already been available in the market is one coal is available. The coal from Lalmatia is available in a few hundred per quintal, and the coal from the Antarctica that you have brought into the market is actually been only possible in a few thousand or lakh dollars per quintal. Who will be going to purchase it? So the coal is available, but then the coal from Antarctica is not satisfying our need. We are not using them for the economic non-feasible purpose. So second thing is the economic feasibility also. Third is cultural acceptability. So your culture must also accept that. For example, suppose somebody over there is non-vegetarian, somebody is a vegetarian. For a non-vegetarian, meat is a resource, fish is a resource. Why? Because that is satisfying some of their needs. Say the protein need, the protein is found in fish. But for a vegetarian people, that fish is for their culture, their lifestyle, is not accepting it for whatever the reason. So the same fish, rich in protein, is not a resource for a, so the culture is, so everything you see, that three things are also very important in order to make something a resource. One is technological accessibility, because you have a technology to catch the fish from the water, fine. Economically feasible, the fish from the water is now available in the market and it is affordable. We can purchase it also, and it is feasible and viable as well, profitable also. But your culture is not accepting that. Vegetarian culture is not accepting the fish, no matter how much it is rich in protein. On the other hand, the non-vegetarians are. So that is why these three parameters are important. And so potential, and the same example coming back, that on the basis of the status of development, the coal of Lalmatia comes under the category of developed resource. The coal from Antarctica has the potential to satisfy human need, but presently it is not satisfying. The reason may be economically non-feasible, the reason may be technologically inaccessible, whatever the reason. Suppose tomorrow we would have a good end of the technology, the evolution of the technology, which is good enough to bring the coal of Lalmatia on a very economically feasible and viable rates and affordable rate, then that coal will also convert into the developed resource. So this is what on the basis of, and then third is the stock and reserve. Both of them are more or less sounding same. Stock and reserve is what? If you are keeping something in reserve, is also in your stock. And what, but then there is a thin line of difference. Anything available in the environment has the capacity to satisfy human need, but for some reason, and that some reason may be once again, so they are called stock. It is presently not satisfying. For example, water is the combination of two very important, that is hydrogen and oxygen, and both of them are inflammable gases, very useful gas. We used to take oxygen from atmosphere, we used to take oxygen from many other resources also, okay, sources rather, not resources. But the same oxygen dissolving plenty in water, the 2/3 of the globe, we know that one has been dominated by the water, and wherever the water is, it is actually the combination of hydrogen and oxygen. But we don't have a suitable technology to take the water from, hydrogen and oxygen from water. Or you may say that, sir, we have one such technology called the process of electrolysis, through which we can extract them or take it out, but then once again it would be economically non-feasible. So all these things. So water or the hydrogen and oxygen present in the water is actually an example of a stock, and the forest, the water in the dam is the example of reserve, because you have also the stock of water there. Whenever you require, you can take it out. The taking out process is accessible and feasible both, but presently entire water in the dam is not been taken out either for irrigation or for hydroelectricity generation and etc. So the water in the dam is an example of reserve. Hydrogen and oxygen dissolved in the water is an example of stock. Anything that has the capacity to satisfy human need but presently for some reason is unable to satisfy it is called the potential resource, and anything that have the capacity to satisfy human need and satisfying also is called the developed resource. So on the basis of stages of development, this is the fourth subdivision of the resources. In my next class, I will be furthering this lecture about what steps must be taken under consideration in order to exploit the resources, and why is the conservation of resources necessary. Till I come with the next lecture of mine, take very good care of yourself.